we're going to start by having a look at the equipment that you'll need to produce the pattern cutting samples that are required by the brief. So pattern cutting, basically, it's the skill of creating fit and style, making the pattern so that it can be cut out and sewn up to make a beautiful garment. And we're starting at the very beginning with the basics of those processes. So first of all, your equipment. You were sent an equipment list, and hopefully you have everything that's on it. It's virtually impossible for you to do the tasks that are required by the brief for this module unless you have the equipment. So if we start with the simplest, you want pencils, and you want H pencils. Your lovely soft pencils that you use for your artwork are no good to you. You want something that creates a fine line. So these are H's. So you could use an HB, but an H is ideal. 2H I think is great. Anything harder than a 2H I think is getting a little bit too hard. Some people prefer propelling pencil. So if you can get one that's 0.5 or 0.3, that's great. I love the idea of a propelling pencil. I just don't seem to have much luck with them. But, you know, over to you. See what you like in terms of a pencil. You will need a tape measure. You'll need an eraser, I'm sure. You'll need paper scissors. You'll need sellotape or glue. You'll need a tracing wheel, and preferably a pointy one like this. You'll be marking through from one sheet of paper to the next, and this is ideal. You'll need it. You'll need this. This is a stiletto awl, and a stiletto awl will make holes in your pattern for marking like the ends of darts or pocket positions. You can use a paper drill, but a stiletto awl does the job. You will need a notcher. This makes marks like this. That will make you balance marks to show where your darts end when they hit a seam. Balance marks for sewing things together, like setting sleeves in. So you definitely need one of these. Like I say, you will need sellotape. You will need a pattern master of some description. These are fabulous. This particular sort, it's a More Plan 1. It has basically a 42 centimetre measurement here, but coming from the centre, 1 centimetre at a time out to 20, that is really helpful when you're marking the centres of things. It also has lovely curves, where when you need to draw a curve, you can twiddle it around until it's in exactly the right position for you. They are relatively expensive, but you can pick up cheaper ones. You can pick up cheaper ones that do the same job. They're a bit floppy. Basically, until I started teaching, I had the same pattern master for about 20 odd years, and then I just started losing them when I was teaching. Everything else is relatively inexpensive. Notches can be expensive. I still have my first notches that I bought in the early 1980s, and in the early 1980s cost me about £35, but I still have them. They're still working. This isn't them. This particular notcher I think cost about £8. I got it online. You can pick them up for about £5. I've used a £5 one. It's perfectly fine, but the blade goes on it within a year. For me, could last you the whole of your time at university. So that's the basic equipment. When I'm doing my demonstrations, I'm going to be using fat and coloured pens so you can see what I'm doing. I don't expect to see any of your patterns made with fat and coloured pens. If you are going to use a coloured pen, you want a really fine tip one. Change of colour is really quite handy sometimes if you're doing lots on one pattern, so you can trace what you're doing. So that's the gist with this. We then need to look at the block. So we're going to be looking at the bodice block, mostly the front of the bodice block, as it turns out, in this particular set of exercises. So the bodice block that we have in the studio is much like this one. I'm using a size 10. The ones in the studio are size 12. You need to note about that size 12 that it's an old school size 12. Before we had such a lot of vanity sizing, the size 12 block matches the size 12 mannequins that are in the studio. Those size 12 mannequins, if you take their measurements, equate to an 8 or a 10 that you would buy in store. Mine's really, really used, but essentially it has one big dart from the shoulder to the bust, and it has one big dart from the waist to the bust. They remove fullness to create a fit. This often referred to as suppression in pattern cutting. So your darts are an easy way to create the suppression of fullness to create a fit. We have the back, it also has darts, has one from the waist to the shoulder, and it has one that runs from the shoulder. That also creates a rather nice fit. You tend not to see it used very much in pattern cutting today. With this pattern, we have the bust line marked, we have notches for putting the sleeves in, we have the dart ends, we have the bust point. The dart ends and the bust point is largely what we're going to be concentrating on for the next couple of weeks. We are going to be shifting those darts around to create different style lines. In moving these darts, we're not going to be creating a different fit, but we are going to be creating, hopefully, a more stylish design through the suppression to create the fit. So that's that. The sleeve to this block fits the armhole beautifully. We're going to be ignoring it for the next couple of weeks, but this is your sleeve pattern, and it matches up. The notches that it has on the sleeve head match with the armhole. I think we might be ready to start.